Welcome to Urbana City Council regular session, Friday, March 15th, 2016, at 6 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hoffman.
Here.
Mr. Pena.
Here.
Mr. Thackeray.
Present.
Mr. Piper.
Here.
Mr. Paul.
Here.
Mr. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Fields.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first thing on our agenda this evening is a stormwater education presentation by Leanne Giraldi-McCullough. Welcome to Urbana City Council, and take it away.
Thank you for having me. As you stated, my name is Leanne McCullough, and you can see that okay. I'm a member of the clean water business and a consultant for the city, and I help the staff meet their stormwater permit requirements, specifically their public education requirements. And as part of those requirements, public involvement is one of the criteria.
Okay, is that better?
Parting gifts. You get the microphone.
All right. Let's go ahead and get started. I've been asked by the staff to give roughly a 20-minute presentation on general stormwater information. And if you do have questions, if you wouldn't mind holding them off till the end so I can make sure I stay on time, that would be great. So thank you again for having me. Can everybody see that all right? Are the lights on? Okay, so everyone knows what stormwater is. It's very commonplace. It's rain, it's snow, it's ice melt, and sleet. But stormwater actually impacts all of us. Whether you're a farmer that doesn't want his fertile fields to wash away or lose half of his field in the nearby river, or you are municipal staff getting up in the middle of the night to clear and salt the roads, or you could be in city engineering and have to deal with flooding issues, constantly trying to do projects that prevent the volume of stormwater. Stormwater really impacts all of us. You could also be a child that just loves splashing in the puddles, or an adult if you like doing that. Stormwater does impact all of us, but something that we don't always think about is each of us actually has an impact on stormwater as well. Stormwater pollution has become a real concern in recent years. So to understand stormwater and how we impact stormwater, I'd like to talk a little bit about how stormwater works. Stormwater works in a watershed. A watershed is an area of land that collectively drains into a common river or a larger water body. It is defined with higher elevations, so it's peaks and valleys. The higher elevation will have the rain decide if it wants to go down one way of the valley or down the other way. So, let me get a little pointer. I hope you can see this. Let's start off with the smallest watershed unit that's recognized by EPA. This little circle here is the city of Urbana. The city of Urbana is located in Dugan Ditch. EPA calls it Dugan's Run watershed. Everything that, all the stormwater that is collected in Dugan Run and in the city and everything it picks up on the streets runs to Dugan Ditch and then into the Mad River. And then this is the city of Springfield. All the stormwater from Springfield also collects in the Mad River and so on and so forth. The next size up watershed is the Great Miami River. Here we are, up here. Here's the Mad River. And then all of these other counties, Miami, Shelby, Dark, Preble, all of them collectively in their stormwater, and anything the stormwater may pick up drains into the Great Miami and finally down to the Ohio River. And then if we expand our view a little bit, the state is primarily consists of two watersheds. Here's our high elevation point right here, Everything that is in the green drains to the Lake Erie watershed. Everything in the yellow drains down to the Ohio River. And if we yet expand again, here is a national perspective. We are a tiny little part right there of a larger watershed, and every color that you see here is a comparable size watershed. So stormwater and everything that it picks up from all of these places, we dip over into Montana, Colorado, we have the north part of Texas, all of their major rivers drain into the Mississippi River, ultimately discharging into the Gulf of Mexico. We can see this little brown area here. It's the hypoxia zone that is related to stormwater pollution. We'll get to that here in a moment. So getting back home, like any other city, Urbana has its role to play in managing stormwater, and we as citizens can actually help them, which is a really great thing. Stormwater pollution is a nationwide problem. So in efforts to keep our nation's water clean, the EPA has created a stormwater permit system that regulates cities and industries. The city of Urbana eventually grew large enough to qualify for an EPA stormwater permit, meaning the city had a large enough population and enough hard surface areas to require being monitored by the OEPA for stormwater pollution concerns. So you can see here, hard surfaces, parking lots, driveways, streets, rooftops, that type of thing, that is the generation of stormwater pollution. A very simple example of that is somebody having a driveway and they park a car on top of it and that car has a leak of oil or gas, that sort of thing. The rain comes, runs across that little spill and picks up those contaminants, the particles of pollution. So that is a very simple example of stormwater. So the stormwater permit has many requirements that the city has to meet, with the primary emphasis being to keep the stormwater clean as it leaves the city to the next community downstream, as we just saw with the watershed example. So essentially, the city has two jobs that they have to do. We have to do structural projects to keep homes and properties safe, but they also have to keep the water clean as it leaves the city. And this is definitely not an easy job. But that's where we as citizens come in. We have a great influence on the pollutants that can get into our stormwater just through our daily activities. To manage the volume of stormwater for the residents, the city of Urbana maintains over 34 miles of storm line, as well as Dugan Ditch and Town Branch. And what we're looking at here is just a general storm sewer map. These gray lines are streets. These little green lines everywhere are underground pipe, the conveyance system, and all these green dots that you see are street level storm drains. Here is a chart of some recent projects that the staff has completed. Here we see a couple of projects that has been fully funded by the city, and then this group was funded by grant-assisted projects. The staff has done a marvelous job of acquiring Ohio Public Works grants, and they're not completely free. They do require matching funds. But this is a competitive grant, so there are a lot of municipalities that are in dire need of these funds as well. So the stormwater is becoming more and more prominent in municipalities nationwide. This is a list of projects the staff is hoping to achieve. Excuse me. One on the books is in 2017 on State Route 36. And of course, all of these projects require a great deal of funding. You can see by these numbers that it costs money to maintain and improve this infrastructure for future development. This is why funding for stormwater management is typically considered along with other utility budget items. Many communities have addressed these expenses by establishing a stormwater utility rather than raising taxes. So that's something for all of us to keep in mind. So let's get back to what we as citizens can do to help out. So not littering is actually connected to water quality. How often do we see this? You can drive just about anywhere in the country and see a site like this. It's so commonplace, it's like stormwater. We really don't think about it. But it's a really important thing and simple, free thing that we can do as citizens. Put all litter in the trash. Never, never, never pour, blow, or put anything down the storm drain. We can see here some plastic bottles and a lot of cigarette butts. I literally was at a stoplight, and I just rolled down my window and I took this picture. That's how commonplace it is. But it really does make a difference. Cigarette butts and plastic bags are two of the biggest litter problems that we have today nationwide. Putting such things as chemicals, paints, and oil down the storm drain do not get treated. Most people still think that, whatever, if I rinse out my paintbrush, it goes to the sanitary sewer and gets treated. Well, it doesn't. Years ago, it used to be that the sanitary and the storm sewer system were connected, but that caused all kinds of problems that we're still dealing with today. So these systems are separated now. So anything you put down the storm drain, leaves, grass, anything like that, is considered a contaminant, and it does not get treated. Tires and other forms of trash in ditches and streams create the perfect mosquito breeding habitat and create pockets of bacteria in low flow conditions. Mosquitoes are just waiting for this kind of stuff. And the stream is a dynamic system and needs oxygen to get the job done of cleaning the water, and these things really clog up the works. So the things that we let get into our stormwater can impact our water quality, like our drinking water as well. In our area, we depend on groundwater or an aquifer as a source for our community drinking water. Some communities rely on surface water, such as rivers, lakes, and reservoirs. So, having said that, if our community relies on groundwater, and we're talking about stormwater pollution, which is activity that we have on top of the land, then what's the connection there? How can anything we do on top of the land affect our water quality underground? What a great question. And the answer is, some major rivers and aquifers are connected and share the same water source. This is a wonderful diagram made by the U.S. Geological Survey, and let's just go through the points of this. This dashed line here, this blue line, is the water table. And all these black arrows that you see are the direction of flow. Actually, underground in our aquifer, there is a very slow-moving current that can actually be influenced. This layer of soil here is the cap for the aquifer. This is a confining layer that keeps the water in this area. Mother Nature's way of taking care of stormwater is to naturally have the rain, or whatever stormwater is, percolate through soil. And this actually acts as a natural filtration system. So when the water has the ability to go through the soil, it naturally gets cleaned. Here, let's just call this the Mad River. It is an aquifer-fed river. And so in times of drought, the water table will rise and feed that level of water for the major stream. In times of flooding, the groundwater is recharged through infiltration and also through floodwaters that get into the stream. So we see this back and forth relationship of this shared water system. And one last thing on this is the community wellhead. If a community wellhead sits there long enough, it can have a drawdown and an impact on the direction of flow of the underground current. And we can see this little V here. That's called a cone of depression. And over the course of time, the well itself will actually have an impact, depending on the recharge rate of the groundwater. So now that we're all on the same page with this diagram, let's add one more element. We talked about how stormwater pollution can eventually affect our water quality. Well, this is how that can happen. Let's just put a municipality right on top of this area. If enough stormwater pollution occurs over a long enough time, stormwater pollution can eventually infiltrate into this system. And if it happens long enough, it can get pulled up into a community wellhead. So this can give us kind of an example of what ultimately can happen if we don't take care of our water. The EPA assesses every watershed for water quality, and right now Dugan Ditch has a scorecard of being impaired. which means that we aren't exactly as healthy as we could be. So we do have some room for improvement. Overall, the region's water is doing well, groundwater and surface water, so that's great news. It's just really important to be proactive in keeping our water clean. This is an image of the Gulf of Mexico. At the beginning, we talked about watersheds, and ultimately we had that nationwide view of the Mississippi River Basin watershed. And this is the hypoxia zone. It is so large, it can only be seen from space. And it is considered a dead zone where it's void of oxygen. The main contaminant or impairment of this area is low dissolved oxygen created by nutrient loading. So it gives us kind of a perspective of the importance of stormwater and the role we all play in that. So really, our take-home message from this is what we do as individuals really matters. So let's be proactive and help keep our stormwater clean, because each of us really do make a difference. So with that, that's the end of the presentation. I really appreciate you having me today, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Oh, and also, the staff has an article that I wrote on this. It has a whole list of things that individuals can do to try to help out in keeping their community's water clean.
Questions, council? Fields?
No.
Mr. Hall?
Thanks for the presentation. That was a good refresher. Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you very much for coming in. I learned quite a bit.
No questions. Thanks an awful lot. One question. Somebody throws a cigarette butt on the street, it goes down the sewer, it ends up in the Gulf of Mexico. Somebody throws a cigarette butt on the street, it goes down the sewer, basically it ends up in the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, not every cigarette.
No, but just in theory. In theory. There's no filtration process between, really.
There is enough contaminants that are impacting the Gulf of Mexico, and they are finding more and more evidence where the northern regions of the United States are having a heavy impact. So not every piece of litter, not every piece of, storm or plastic bag or cigarette butt or, herbicide will reach the Gulf of Mexico, but it is definitely making an impact.
Right.
And they have been able to trace, different elements to connect some dots. So it's something that we need to.
I know I clean an awful lot of cigarette butts up downtown. It's a pet peeve of mine. So.
Well, one thing that we have to keep in mind is it's, not just the pockets of bacteria that happen when we put litter into an aquatic system. The cigarette butts leach a toxin, and the old school theory was, well, I'll field strip it and tear it in tiny little pieces and it'll biodegrade quicker like that. And eventually they do biodegrade, but they are finding more and more that there are chemicals that are leaching, and the magnitude that we're dealing with really is quite large. So it is just an accumulation, and the increase in population results in an increase in impervious surfaces, and an increase is a very complicated system in everything. Right. And so we are really starting to feel the effects of it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Back up one, go ahead.
Yeah. Is the answer for small municipalities like this to install some type of filtering system, or is there some other out for us to do our part?
Well, I think people are smart. If you really do a strong campaign and educate your public and have them take ownership, this is our water quality. Now that we understand how this works, and really have a lengthy campaign where they can clearly connect the dots for themselves, they can do a marvelous job of helping out. But to answer your question, there are different manual things that you can install to catch floatables and that type of thing. Like for catch basins, they have all kinds of great technology out for that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Thacker?
I'm good, thank you very much.
What was the problems they were having with the old filtration systems in with the sewer?
Right, the CSOs. Well, originally they had the sanitary sewer and the storm sewer combined. And the sheer volume of the runoff from storm water blew out the process for those sanitary sewer. So they actually had raw sewage blowing out of the system. And it happened, quite often. And so they said, wow, this is, and it became a real complicated situation because if you have a positive population growth, you have to add that much more infrastructure. Infrastructure is becoming a really big deal to most cities because it's outdated and it can't keep up with the volume.
You said something about dumping gas and paints and liquids in the storm sewer. What about dumping all that stuff in dirt in your yard or something like that? Does that actually get down to the storm sewer? Or
what a
when it
wonderful question. Brings up a point that I actually missed. If you have, it can. If you have a thin layer of soil and you have a waste oil drum in the back of the barn, or you have a leaky fuel tank that you use for the tractor, over the course of time that absolutely can get into the groundwater. So, and it doesn't have to be connected to a major river that is aquifer fed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Piper?
I was always told too about people dumping their oil after they change the oil in their vehicles, they dump it on the ground.
Yeah.
And I've kept hearing that was a bad thing to do, because it'd eventually get into our water table.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't know what the ratio is, but one drop of oil, I think, can contaminate 100 gallons of water.
yeah.
Easily.
Okay, thank you.
I love water, so I gotta ask questions. You're not done, Sid. I'm very interested in our water quality. It's one of the best things we have in Urbana, and I noticed on your map the watershed pretty much goes east and west here in Urbana, and it looks like we're about on the top of it. If you looked at the one map, part of it goes down in Dugan's Run, and the rest of it goes over to the Buck Creek area, and
Well, I
goes that
have to refer
direction?
your staff on that.
Right. That's what I was told a long time ago, anyway.
And it may
It looks like we're probably at the, I hate to say it, we're at the head, so anything we put in, everybody else is going to get. So it's important for us not to put anything in because they'll eventually get caught. Can the EPA check, you said the big plume in the Gulf, can they check where that comes from? Because I know everybody contributes to that.
Yeah.
But I can't see where we did, population of 10,000, and Chad does a great job with all his stuff. And can they track how much cities are putting into that on past us? I mean, they check the Mad River past here, and then they go past Springfield and Dayton and Cincinnati, and then on down the river. Can they check and see who's putting in the most?
Yes, that's part of the permit process. And the way they do that is they do a watershed assessment, and that's the tailpipe assessment, essentially. And so they can't really say, oh, you guys contributed, 100,000 gallons more of XXX than these guys, but they can say, okay, we clearly have a contaminant coming out of this MS4 system. So and they test for 3 parameters: biology, physical habitat, and then water chemistry. So that is exactly what the permit system does.
Since we have the Mad River down here, which is one of the few cold water habitats in the state of Ohio, right, Mayor? One of the only ones around, and we get tested quite often.
Yes.
So I would think that when they're checking that, we would be fairly in the good range of what we're putting in the river downstream. Is that right or wrong?
You're correct. The Mad River is a cold water habitat, and the last assessment that Dugan's Run, that's what EPA calls your watershed, was done in 2003, and it was listed as impaired then, and it takes several years. You're not scheduled to be tested again until 2018. The 3 impairments that they found was channelization, which means that the streams have been altered more than likely for conveyance of stormwater, to drain ag fields or, so on and so forth. The other one was organic enrichment, which was listed as E. coli. So that's a fecal matter bacteria. And the third one was, I gave the report to, do you guys remember what the third one was? Well, it's similar. It's, habitat alterations. So it's very similar to channelization. So one of the things that EPA tests for is biology. The river system is very dynamic, and if you only test for chemistry, you could have missed a gigantic pollution plume 3 seconds ago. So they test for biology, the bugs that live there. And you find those delicate little bugs, they'll tell you your water is fairly healthy. If they're only finding aquatic worms and crayfish, you probably have a pollution problem. They also test for habitat, and that's one of your issues. Soil, the loss of soil erosion, that kind of thing is considered the nation's largest contaminant, stormwater contaminant.
They tested this in 2003, and we're not going to do it again until 2018.
Yeah, one thing that
That doesn't make sense.
Well, nature moves very slowly, and so they want to give plenty of time for any kind of best management practices that are being applied to have time to take effect. So it is a really long time in between, but it's when they test for biology, it can take years for any kind of improvements that you are actually trying to do to take effect. So, and I'm not an EPA expert by any means, but I just know that that was on your report. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, it doesn't make sense that the most important thing we have is water, and I went to a seminar at Brown University, and the guy said the next major war is going to be over water because you can't drink oil, and yet we're waiting 15 years to check the water. That makes no sense to me at all.
Well, when they tested in 2003, they checked for those 3 parameters, and then they give you a set of guidelines. Your problems are A, B, and C. Okay, here are some things you can do to help A, B, and C. And then Mother Nature takes years and years and years to really see the effects of A, B, and C if you do apply them. I mean, years. She's slow and complete and perfect in her processes, and it takes a really long time, so that's why. And another thing that I think EPA is struggling with is budget issues just like anyone else, and staffing to get the job done, which may or may not be a factor in your next due date. But, and your report is older, and so it probably would be worth a phone call to EPA to see if they've changed your next analysis date.
To add on to that, do you know when the test was done before 2003?
I'm not sure that you had one, because I asked Tyler when your permit was issued. And so the records, I think, go back to 2007. The Clean Water Act was revised multiple times, and that had an impact on who was permitted and who was not. And so they are having to really tighten the reins on the size and scope of population and hard surfaces. And so that included you guys probably then. So my guess is that probably was your first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said Mother Nature works slow, but people work very quickly when they dump. So I would want to tell who, and who would they tell if they saw a dump going on?
Well,
Tell you?
No, stop doing that, please, it's really bad. No, I advise that they call the city, and then, so you guys are aware of it. And then also, EPA has a spell hotline. One of the other really large part of your stormwater permit is called illicit discharge detection and elimination system. EPA is starting to hammer really hard on that. So if you do get a phone call, then they can start going up their storm sewer map and say, what kind of contaminant is this? Is it a city? Was it an individual? And really start putting together their report for that, because that's part of their annual report.
As far as how far back the testing goes, I don't know where the official ones are, but since I've been on council, we've been testing the Mad River. I mean, like I said, there's a cold water habitat, and the EPA was here because the fishermen come from all over to go here, and they want to make sure it was good. So I don't know where the official reports are, but I know we have been tested for a long, long time.
Well, I was just saying, if they said 15 years for the next test, maybe if there was a test before that, maybe it was showing progress and they were gonna,
Right.
you know, if it was really polluted, maybe it would have been 2008 instead of 18, that they would have wanted the next one. I was just kind of trying to put some context around that time period.
Yeah, he's right. It is a rare full water habitat. They have brown trout in there. So, it is gonna be heavily monitored by EPA. And, and the three impairments that you guys were listed in your report way back when was basically habitat alteration, channelization, and there was some E. coli in there as well, which means you're dealing with some sewage issues more than likely. So it must not have been too bad. What they're looking at is Dugan's Run, and it is a certain space for that. And then, the Mad River watershed actually encompasses a lot more than that. So they're not just testing for you. In fact, the EPA report that I sent the guys was the Mad River watershed report. And then Dugan's Run is a tiny little chapter in that larger report. It tells you the biology, it tells you all the chemistry and all the physical habitat stuff that they assess. So you're just a little sliver of that, the larger portion.
And my guess would be that their testing sites are they're past Springfield. They want to capture who's doing what, so,
Yeah, that would make sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
For your information, we got in trouble one year because there's a little campground north of the city that people were dumping into, and we watched it go by, and then we got blamed for it. And that was before you were here, Chad, so, yeah, we do have effects north of us that still affect what we do, so, okay, that's all I have. I'll be done. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up of Chad? She mentioned the storm sewer system. EPA is going to rely on that for kind of backtracking if there's an issue or anything. How is our mapping?
We have some very good mapping for storm sewer, including sanitary both. I can't name one area of town that we don't have actual infrastructure mapped.
Okay, good.
We don't do a lot of camera work on storm sewer unless there's an issue. And if any time that we do find a deficiency in the map or maybe a possible cross-connection between the storm and the sanitary, we notify Tyler and he gets it on our maps. And
Okay.
because Tyler's got everything digital now, so yeah, we're in good shape there.
Chad, while you're there, and one quick one. So if my wife cleans out her paintbrush inside the house and it ends up in the sanitary system, what you deal with through the wastewater treatment plant will take care of that. But keep it out of the
We will
storm.
do our best at the wastewater plant. No guarantees, but yes, that would be the more correct place versus your storm drain or catch basin.
Gotcha.
Go ahead, Doug.
What percentage increase in treatment at the waste treatment plant do you see whenever we get heavy rains?
Anywhere from a 3 to 4 to 1 ratio. So roughly, we'll treat 2 million gallon easy numbers.
Okay.
We'll see 6 to 8 million.
So there's still quite a bit of storm water that comes into our system. Is it identified, or is it just, we don't know for sure, it's just a lot of little maybe places coming in?
Yeah, it could be leaks in manholes, cross connects with downspouts, which is a big player that we're getting ready to put some focus on.
Or sump pumps?
Sump pumps is the next one. I would have to say probably the biggest would be downspouts.
And what do you estimate that costs the city in a year, if you could ballpark that, an additional treatment cost? Because that throws your whole system off when you get that kind of water.
Yeah, night before last, we hit 7.8 million gallon. We'd probably increase between $30,000 and $75,000 a year, just as a ballpark guess, yeah. Yeah.
There's a test they can do for spouting. They put smoke, and then they can watch where it comes up to the houses. That's the way they know which spoutings are hooked up to the sanitary sewer.
Stand on the street and watch for smoke.
Mine goes out in the yard, so.
Good.
Okay, neighbors. Very interesting, very topical things, so. Just don't leave them flint. Okay, next on our agenda is approval of minutes from Durham City Council, regular session, March 1st, 2016. Council, if you're so inclined.
Mr. President, I move that we accept the minutes from March 1st as prepared.
I'll second.
Okay, no corrections or additions. All those in favor of accepting those minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Communications, Madam Clerk.
Number 1, Planning Commission meeting minutes of December 21st, 2015, and January 25th of 2016, emailed February 26th, 2016. And number 2, memorandum from Burgess and Nyepel Incorporated regarding roundabout summary, emailed March 2nd, 2016.
Okay, council, you can speak to those both together or one at a time.
I'd like to make a motion, we speak to them together, please.
I'll second.
Okay, any questions or comments on either one of those communications? I'm glad we got the one about the roundabout. Wish we had it before the meeting, but thank you for getting it to him. All those in favor of accepting the two communications, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And move right into administrative reports from the Board of Control.
Number 1, the Board of Control recommends council authorize the purchase of East Lawn Garden Center of Urbana in the amount of $9,300 net with trade for the purchase of 3 60-inch Snapper Pro commercial zero-turn mowers. 2 of these units will be charged to Parks and Recreation capital and are in the 2016 budget for $14,000. And the 3rd unit will be charged to the wastewater treatment plant capital and is in the 2016 budget for $7,500. This model is considered to be the lowest and best quote of the 8 quotes received from 4 different vendors. Summary attached. Vote 2-0.
Okay, council, to speak to this, we need a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Hopefully everybody got a chance to read through the summary. Try not to get into a whole lot of detail for you, but to give you an idea of the responses we did get. And we were originally currently we're using the Cub Cadet tanks. I think it's a KW, KZW or something like that. The LZKW. When we got the bids in, or the quotes in for these, they're not having a 72-inch model in the Cub this year. So we knew we needed the 72-inch also. So there was some interest of maybe looking at a different brand, so we moved to the Snapper. It seems to be a little heavier gauge, a little more robust, if you will. So we're making a switch. We'd like to, again, we're recommending that we move with the Snapper Pros for the 60-inch. And based on the budget, we're coming in about $12,000 under budget for the combined purchase. So fairly competitive, got a good response, and that's kind of where we're ready to move forward.
Okay, Mr. Hoffman, questions?
No, I'm glad this has been a much smoother process than when I first came on council. These mowers used to turn into Jerry Springer, and I remember sitting in the audience before I was on council watching it go down. I thought, I didn't figure we could argue over mowers, but as long as it gets the job done, I appreciate you looking at different models. As long as the department heads and the guys riding them are good with them, it's a good deal. I'm perfectly fine with it.
Mr. Paul?
I'm glad to see that our unallocated funds for 2016 has now tripled by adding $12K to that small pile of $5,000. Good for us. This is good. Obviously it's well needed. I think the other mowers are pretty well beat up by now.
Well, they rotated. I think they started several years ago, rather than trying to run the life out of them, getting a lot of maintenance and downtime issues. It just seems to work pretty well to keep them rotated about every 2 years or so. And just keep them fresh. You're doing kind of general maintenance upkeep and not necessarily the major repairs and downtime.
But you're running them all the time. Yeah, all the time.
The distance mowing, the park, they get a lot of use.
Yeah. Good enough. Thank you.
Mr. Scott?
Are the department heads the one that make the recommendations to you?
We went out and got the quotes, and then as we got them back, we kind of made a decision at what we thought. And then we met with Chris and Chad. Then they actually went out and looked at the 2 that we were kind of narrowed down to. We're willing to take a shot and try something different.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Thacker?
No questions, I like coming in under budget.
Mr. Kenyon?
No questions, thanks, Gary.
Mr. Piper?
Yeah, I went out and talked to Chad a little bit the other day, about an hour and a half I spent out there with him on different things. But on the mowers for the city park, they go through a lot of mowing, a lot of hours, and within 2 to 3 years, they're just pretty much going to start costing the city money, so no more difference in what it costs them to go ahead and buy new ones, then that's the way to go.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fields?
It's glad, like Mr. Hawkins said, easier process, easiest one I've seen done since I've been here.
One time it was easier when we traded every year, but that only lasted about 3 years, so. Okay, any further questions, council? Hearing none, all those in favor accepting the Board of Control's recommendation authorize the purchase order to East Lawn and Garden Center of Urbana in the amount of $9,300 for 3 6-inch Sniper Pro lawnmowers. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous, thank you. And the next one, please.
The Board of Control recommends council authorize a purchase order to Lance Sales and Service of Urbana in the amount of $9,995 net with trade for the purchase of one 15-foot batwing mower for the airport. This will be charged to airport capital and is in the 2016 budget for $15,000. This unit is considered to be the lowest and best quote of the 3 quotes received from 3 different vendors. Summary attached. Vote 2-0.
Okay, council, speak of this, we need a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
It's a tie.
Mr. Piper. You gotta fight for it now.
Mr. Piper won.
Okay.
Ring the bell.
The current batwing mower at the airport, I think it has welds on top of welds, the last way I've understood it to be described. Sort of well past its reliable, useful life. So we had in the budget this year to replace that unit. We did go out for quotes, we had 3 quotes come back, and we're moving forward with the woods mower from Lance locally, and we are going to trade. They're willing to take that over on trade, and we'll gladly let them pay it on trade. So came in under budget, and we're anxious to get something new out there to maybe be a little more reliable and keep it up.
Okay. Mr. Paul, questions?
No questions.
Mr. Scott?
No questions, thank you.
Thacker?
I love under budget. No
Mr.
question.
Kenyon?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Piper?
No questions.
Fields?
Hope the new one services as long as the old one did.
Mr. Hoffman?
No questions.
Okay, no further questions. All those in favor accepting the Board of Control's recommendation authorize a purchase order for Lance Sales and Service of Urbana amount of $9,995 for a batwing mower, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0, thank you. And the next one, please.
The Board of Control recommends council authorize a purchase order to Koenig Equipment of Urbana in the amount of $48,303.55 for the purchase of one John Deere 328E 2-speed skid steer without trade-in. This will be charged to the wastewater treatment plant department capital and is in the 2016 budget for $35,000. The recommendation is to purchase the unit without trade-in and place the existing skid steer on governmentdeals.com, where it is estimated to bring approximately $18,000, which will bring the net cost of the new unit to approximately $31,000. This recommendation is considered to be the lowest and best quote of 2 quotes received from 2 different vendors. Summary attached. Vote 2-0.
Okay, council, speak to this, we need a motion.
So moved. Second.
They hesitated, but
I'll go ahead and I'll get this thing started, and if you have specific questions around technical data and specs, Chad to back us up. Again, Chad had in the budget this year to get him to replace his skid steer, he budgeted $35,000. He gave us the specs and what he's looking for. We sent those out to 4 different firms. One responded with a no quote, said they were not going to quote. One didn't respond at all. The other 2 provided the pricing. So basically, we're looking at keeping ours in terms of not trading it in. Chad believes if we can put it on gov deals,
and get a better value out of it. That'll just drop down and bring his net cost below budget. So, if you have any specifics around performance and that type of thing, Chad, be happy to answer questions for you.
Mr. Scott?
Couple quick questions. The existing machine, how old is it?
It's a 2001, 2002.
And the need for a two-speed machine?
We do a lot of help with, for the street guys in snow removal. For an example, we have a snow box for our skid loader. We also have one for our end loader. So when Colin calls for snow removal, my staff heads for City Hall first and Monument Square to allow the plow trucks to stay out on the streets and not worry about parking lots. That amount of travel time, as you're aware, with a single-speed transmission,
Yeah.
you can walk faster.
Yeah, it's kind of like a road gear.
It is a road gear.
Yeah. Thanks, Chad.
Yeah.
Mr. Thacker?
No questions. Good job.
Mr. Pena?
No question.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
No, I don't have any question, but I spent a lot of time with Chad, like I said, about an hour and a half, and we talked about this skid loader. So in the meantime, I went to the city department and asked them what they liked about their skid loader over the one that the treatment plant had. And they told me two-speed transmission is the way to go.
Let's speak up, Mr. Piper. Speak up next time, just so we can hear you. Our clerk's having thoughts. Mr. Fields?
Nothing.
Mr. Hoffman?
Nothing.
Mr. Paul?
So my only question, Chad, is we're basing our savings, and you could ruin a streak here with this, is where did the 18,000 come from? Did you go out and kind of scope similar machines to get an idea what they were going for? Okay.
Yeah,
We figured.
we got on a couple different auction sites and see what other units we're bringing. We was right in that 13 to 14,000 for trade-in. So we felt that we could pick up a few $1,000s by going to gov deals. The other nice thing of it is we can put a minimum bid on gov deals. So we can set the minimum bid at what was offered at trade-in.
Right.
These used skid loaders, they're hot commodities, they're hard to find.
Okay, well, I'm shocked that we've gone through.
I will report back to you what it brings.
I was going to ask for that too. We've done 3 border control issues and we've saved 20 grand. That has never happened before.
It's kind of fun.
I like this. That's we're going to spend it. Yeah, that's right. Give us another 5 minutes. That's all, thank you.
Any other questions, council? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the board control's recommendation to authorize the purchase of vacating equipment in the amount of $48,303.55 for John Deere 328E skid loader, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next one.
The Board of Control recommends council authorize a purchase order to White Sport of Urbana in the amount of $26,858 for the purchase of a Ford F-250 pickup truck for the wastewater treatment plant. This purchase will be charged to wastewater treatment plant capital and is in the 2016 budget for $15,000 with trade-in. The recommendation is to purchase the truck without trade-in and transfer the current Ford F-150 to the Parks and Recreation Division. This truck is considered to be the lowest and best quote of 2 quotes received. Summary attached, vote 2-0.
Okay, council, speak of this, need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Again, I'll kick this off, and if you have specifics, Chad can kick in. Again, Chad put in requests and specifications for a new pickup truck for the wastewater plant. And originally, when he budgeted to have a trade-in, which was, I think, is a 2004, if I'm not mistaken, F-150. Looking at the rest of our fleet, some of the other departments, some of those are the tons are hanging out pretty badly, so it just made sense to take the used F-150 from Chad and transfer it to the Parks and Recreation Department. They've got a couple of little S-10s that are just starting to really struggle to keep them up on the road. So not for sure what's coming out of the fleet, but we'd like to just move Chad's truck into the Park and Rec fleet then, he hopefully saves enough money with his skid steer and his mower that he can make up some of the difference that we're not picking up on this. So he will be watching the price on his skid steer and some of the other things, so that's the recommendation as we have it.
I noticed this one was last after the other three came up. Well played. Spoke a little early.
Mr. Thacker?
I have no questions.
Mr. Keenan?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Piper?
Well, he told me when I was talking to him the other day that the truck, they purchased it down at Buckle. And how many years has Buckle been out of business? So that's where the truck come from, he told me, and they bought it used. So, thank you, Chet.
That's what I bought, is used.
Mr. Fields? Mr. Hoffman?
Was there any reason that you're going with the 250, just a heavier duty, you guys putting a little more wear on it?
Yeah, we've noticed over the last several years with the camera trailer, hauling manhole lids, just doing a little bit of that heavier out on the street work with the plant truck. It gives us a backup to our sewer maintenance truck to pull the camera trailer. If we wouldn't have a few of those kind of issues, we would have went back to another half-ton. I have a half-ton personally, and I like the ride better than a three-quarter, but it's not an extended cab, it is a regular cab. So we just found more of the duty of a three-quarter ton to basically be a work truck.
So you picked the truck based on need? I mean, you didn't go for any extra bells and whistles, no extended cabs?
No plow package, none of that. No.
Right, that's good. What are you going to do with the extra truck from the park? Is it going to get reallocated, or is it going to gov deals too?
I guess we'll have to do our inventory to figure out, does it go to the gov deal, or does it go to the July 4th auction?
Okay.
So we'll have to look at that once we identify for sure the timing and where everything plays out.
Okay, thank you.
I have no questions, but it makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Mr. Scott?
I see you got both quotes from White's. Was the Dodge a three-quarter ton?
It was. Yes, it was. I talked to the street guys. I mean, it seems like it's kind of predominant in the street and the water guys that have Fords. So I did a little bit of checking with them. They haven't had hardly any problems. So we thought, okay, it'll be the only Ford that wastewater has, because we've been, over the last two purchases have been Chevrolet. So I did a little bit of checking with them guys to check, how much warranty work's been done to them. Are they breaking down very often? So we just kind of went ahead and stuck with the rest of the other two departments.
Okay, thanks, Chad.
Yep.
Any further questions, council? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the board control's recommendation authorize the purchase order White's Ford in the amount of $26,858 for two F-Ford 250 pickup truck, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?